let's have a lesson and discussion on this work. Follow the lesson for free, pick up some context about the piece and some tips on playing. But if you're interested, I do have a sheet music edition of this one, number 7, as well as number 8, and there's a link for that in the description. So one important factor about this is that the composer is a fairly large composer, a fairly big name, and not for guitar though. He only wrote a handful of just this collection of guitar works, but a pretty big name for other styles and operatic composers. So I think it's really important to think about that operatic nature of these works. Maybe not as much in number 7, but certainly in number 8, which I'll be making a video for as well. So, but you can see some of that in the composition. Lots of dynamics and outbursts and changes to dolce, and just lots of drama in the piece. So you can keep that in mind to make sure that it has a dramatic nature to it. These pieces are pretty high quality. I'm a little surprised they're not played more often, although I would guess the reason would be that they are so they're at a very specific level. In one way, they're quite short, and the majority of them are relatively easy, but there's a somewhat mature nature, and some of the sections can be difficult, a little bit at least. Putting them firmly in the intermediate level, but like professionals, the professional circuit players, like they might not be drawn to them because of their short nature, and they're definitely contained in their technique to an intermediate level. Despite that, though, you can take them to quite a high level, and I don't find them easy, that's for sure, but I also don't find them particularly awkward or difficult. So firmly in the intermediate level, which is great, and I love finding these works. I chose number 7 and number 8 because they're in A minor and A major, and I thought they would be a nice pairing to go together. So with that in mind, I think there's not too much to talk about. The pieces need a certain amount of freedom away from your technique, so you just have to work them a little bit extra. But I think we can do a walkthrough and just discuss the piece. I think the dynamics are fairly important here. It's tricky to play some of this stuff with large dynamic contrast and also have them legato, so you have to balance it a little bit. I start off with 2-3, by the way, just because the next chord is 1. We can't do that later in the piece, but because it's the beginning of the piece, I just do that so it's a smooth transition. That there, I shift 2 and 3 up and then slide them down into this chord shape just for fingering security in the left hand. You could use 3-4. You just have to jump the 3rd finger over. That would work very well as well. So I'll leave that up to you, whichever one you like. They both have advantages and disadvantages. Just make sure there should be a little bit of an outburst. It's not melody, it's just like it's linking material there. A decrescendo, start soft again. And then make a clear dolce, kind of like singing there to create some contrasts. There's no great way to finger that section. I just do the stretch, and I use 2. It's a little bit of a stretch, nothing serious, but... And he even notates it as an 8th note, so you can let go of the chord right away. That cadence, though, there's no way of getting around it. You have to jump your fingers over. Then forte. Yeah, by the way, these sections, like bar measure 9 and measure 17, it's like that's the thing that encourages me to push the tempo a little bit faster than otherwise is comfortable for the octave jumping there. That happens later, just because it could be kind of like low energy, I guess. But the dynamics can help. So if you make sure there's some dynamic contrast, you can keep the tempo not too fast. It's just a hair tricky because there's no break on it there. This part's fine. Sorry. I slide 2 down there just because you end up with 3 for the chord. There's no special way to practice that. I practiced a little bit just like going, just making sure you like really get that note. Because if you're not really secure on getting that upper octave E, you'll squeak it and buzz it, and you'll just miss it a lot. So just really work on making sure you actually get it. So you just stop on that note and let it ring a little bit. It's not possible when you're going faster, but practicing it in that way just makes sure that you build some security into that one note and that you're not shortchanging it and setting yourself up for failure there. So yeah, just like real confidence building. Okay, this particular 2 measures is a little bit, there's nothing going on, and if the tempo's too slow, I just felt like it didn't feel great, so that encouraged me to play it at the tempo I did. Decrescendo. I don't love the way those slurs sound at the end there, but just make sure that you're just getting some good sound out of the notes. If you shortchange any of the notes there, it sounds a little flimsy or light. So yeah, just practice it nice and slow with a nice thick tone, and then when you play it a little bit faster, just try to retain some of that. In terms of right-hand fingering, I think it's all fairly straightforward. Lots of repeated fingers with the chords, of course. But measure 20 and 21 is probably the one spot that students will be asking me about what fingering to use. So, an ideal fingering would probably be something where you end the little arpeggio with A-M. That way, I and M can start the next arpeggio. Sorry. A-M-I. 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 That would be the ideal fingering so that you don't end up with an awkward string cross on the arpeggio. But to tell you the truth, that it doesn't feel completely natural to me. I think if you practiced it enough, that would work out really well, like using AM and then you get to use PIM afterwards. That makes total sense in terms of ergonomic fingering, right? And avoiding string crossings. I'm not bothered by awkward string crossings all that much. I've practiced them so much in technique that the technique of crossing strings doesn't feel too weird to me. So in that passage, I could play it with just IM. Or I could play it with using A occasionally. And neither fingering bothers me. I just play through the awkward string crossing. So that's always a question for students, is that you can either play through the awkward string crossing and just not worry about it, and then you can even just use IM the whole time. Or you can work out the ideal fingering, like I suggested. A-M-I-M. A-M-I-M. And and have, you know, a more ergonomic fingering. For me personally, I think for myself and other upper level players, I would say you can just play it however you want. If you don't mind awkward string crossings, just play through it. Probably for a student that is like is going to have to really practice this passage, I would probably recommend that they use that AM at the end of each arpeggio there, just because if they just practice that every time, they'll be able to play that passage smoothly with no awkward string crossings. If that's a technique issue for them, they can just bypass it and just play it with a good fingering. It's one of the joys of classical guitar that we end up talking about right-hand fingering, and there's always a ton of choices, and it's always mystifying too to students that, like, why would professionals sometimes not play with the ideal fingering? Occasionally with these works, it's because if you practice your awkward string crossings, you can just play straight through it without even thinking about it very much. So it's just one of those debates. I'm actually going to make a book on right-hand fingering choices that talks about all this stuff, but that won't be done for a little while, so you'll have to wait. So great little piece, filled with lots of drama but nice. I like the level. I like the intermediate level, and I like the length, and they're quite full sounding and dramatic. So really nice. And I think you'll really like number 8, which has a even more of a operatic kind of flair to it.